Thinking of sending the breakup email? Don't be foolish.
Think that they'll get back to you when they say, we'll get back to you? Don't be foolish.
Think they're gonna sign the contract just because you sent the contract? Yo, don't be foolish. It's April Fool's Day, and we're gonna make sure you don't get the wool pulled over your eyes today on Full Funnel. Hey, Funnel Cake Nation. Is that a thing? Well, it is now. I'm Raj Nation. He's Tyler Lessard, and you're watching Full Funnel, the weekly show that Bored Ape Yacht Club tried to make at least a dozen NFTs out of, but we told them, nah, this is for the people. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Why? Because this is the only program that is faster than Domino's, where we take one hot sales topic, slice it 3 ways, and deliver it fresh to you in under 10 minutes, all to help you go out, show out, and fill up your funnel. Today's order, we're calling out the April sales fools. Let's dish. Top funnel. Hi, Tyler. I've made several attempts to connect with you over the last few weeks with no luck. At this point, I can only assume you've been eaten by an alligator. Please let me know if you need saving. Best, Raj. Tyler, that's a classic example of the break-up email in prospecting. What's your stance? Foolish or nah?
Well, Raj, if that email had its own show, it would be called Fool Funnel. To me, that type of an email is foolish to be sending, because I don't think there is such a thing as breaking up in a sales conversation if you honestly believe that you have a solution that can help your prospect. There's 2 things that you want to accomplish with that sales sequence. One is to create an immediate conversation if the timing is right for that individual. But the second is to leave a lasting impression such that you are top of mind if and when the problem that you solve becomes painful enough for them to be looking for a solution. And by pulling out things like, I hope you didn't get eaten by an alligator, you're more likely putting yourself on the list of people I never want to respond to, as opposed to, hey, here's somebody who may be able to help me out in the future.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I do think it's, in many cases, highly unnecessary, especially if you do want to keep the conversation going. That said, in the past, I have successfully sent the breakup email and gotten a response where I was like, hey, at this point, I can assume you've either won the lottery and are on a beach, or you've just been too busy to get back to me, but it is something you want to do. Respond with 1 or 2 with what your real situation is. And they're like, ha ha ha, I didn't win the lottery. I was just too busy, right? And then I've also sent sequences more recently where the breakup email is, I literally will say, hi, LeBron, I'm anxiously awaiting the decision. And I'll put a little gif of LeBron at the decision. Will you take your talents to a Zoom meeting with me? And that has gotten no responses. To my surprise, to be honest, I thought it would get a lot of responses, but it didn't. This also literally happened where someone replied to an email of mine 8 months later, where that sequence did end with the LeBron email. But what they did was they replied to the first email in the sequence. The breakup email actually didn't have any bearing on like a negative outcome. And in fact, it was like as if they never even saw the final email to begin with. Sending the breakup email in and of itself, I wholeheartedly do not believe is something that is like destroying your prospecting sequences. Do you maybe want to try something else? Sure. But foolish? Nah. Mid fun.
Raj, this was a really great meeting. We've learned a lot, and we're going to take it internally and get back to you next week.
Okay, that sounds great.
That's it, Raj? That's your response? That's great.
Uh-huh.
What do you all think? Foolish or not to let them take it internal?
We will get back to you is where deals go to die. Sometimes it's well-meaning and they actually do have to have internal conversations. Other times it's a polite punt. Regardless of the scenario, you're still completely out of the loop of what's supposed to happen next. Your job as a seller is to not just be in charge, be in control, and own the call itself. It's to own the entire process. One of the things I always tell the teams that I work with is imagine after every single call, you have to then have a meeting with your manager to give them a status update on the opportunity, and you're not allowed to say you're waiting to hear back from them. So instead of we'll get back to you, ask them, what are those conversations going to be like? Can we all get on a follow-up call together? Because I'm sure they're going to have some questions that might be hard for you to answer because it's going to be hard to remember all the things we talked about today. Or at the very least, can you just get a placeholder on their calendar for the following week after they've supposedly had those internal conversations to get a status update? You've got to be doing your part to get ahead of these issues and also keeping yourself in the loop and involved in the deal process, because it is your deal process.
The one other thing that you can do is be explicit about asking them, what can I provide to you to help those next conversations? And in that case, you may open up an opportunity to provide them with an explicit next step, because they may come back and say, you know what, if we could get a little bit more detail on how you compete with this other vendor, that would actually be really helpful. That now gives you another concrete next step in the conversation and a reason to follow up with them the following day and keep that deal moving forward. So I agree, Raj, foolish to let it go internal. Always make sure that you have a clear next step coming out of that meeting.
Bottom fun. Okay, Tyler, I'm going to send over that contract. Do you think you can sign it today?
Yeah, I think so. I've got a pretty busy afternoon, but I'll see what I can do.
2 days later. Still no contract. Sitting back and waiting for them to sign. Foolish or nah? Interestingly enough, this happened to me just a couple weeks ago. I had that final call and I said, all right, I'll send over the contract. And I think we can get going on this next week. And I want to get your onboarding started. So would you be able to sign that later today? And they said, I think so. I got a pretty busy afternoon, but I should be able to get to it by the evening. Evening happened, nothing. So here's what I did. I actually sent a 2-step text message. My first message was, hey, want to make sure the contract is good to go. Don't know if you've had free time to check yet. They replied, not yet. Should get to it this afternoon. And here's where most people, I think, will just be like, okay, great. And they're just like, yes, I'm getting exactly what I want. I told them I need this and they're going to get back to me. Great. But you want to make sure you give that request and then follow up with some empathy still. So here's how I responded. I said, okay, great, thanks. I don't want to take you out of your workflow though, so if you can't get to it until tomorrow or later today, I totally understand. And just that little push, that's what got the deal signed within the next 5 minutes. So make sure you toss that piece of empathy in there. Find a way to be a little bit more relatable and understand that they may have something going on themselves. So sitting back and waiting for it, foolish.
Now, there's one interesting thing you mentioned in your story that I would love to dive into a bit further, and that was the idea of actually, before the contract is even sent, trying to set a next step post-signature as something that can drive a sense of urgency to make sure it does get signed quickly once it's sent over. For example, if you are in those late stages and you know you're about to send over that contract, don't be shy to have a conversation around the next step once they've signed. For example, setting up an onboarding call for the following week and starting to get consensus amongst who needs to be there and how are we going to make that happen. That way, if you haven't heard back on the contract status, you can use that as your reason for re-engaging. So my take, Raj, sitting back and just waiting for them to sign, foolish.
The close. In Top Funnel, we talked about the breakup email in prospecting. Tyler says it's foolish because you want to keep the conversation going. I say nah, because I think even if you send that, if you send another email a month later, chances are they probably forgot the breakup email.
In mid-funnel, we talked about the dreaded, I'm going to take this back internally to talk about it with my team. Don't be a fool and just let those next steps happen on their own. Make sure you set that next appointment.
And in bottom funnel, we talked about getting that deal signed after the contract is sent. We both say it's foolish to sit back and just wait around if more than a day has gone by. Instead, either through call or through text message, make the request and pull back with empathy. Our funnel is full. We hope you can get back out there now and fill up yours. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe before you head out of here. And guess what? You can also catch us in podcast form as well. Just search Full Funnel. He is Tyler Lessard. I am Raj Nation. You have been watching Full Funnel exclusively on Sales Feed. We will catch you next time. But in the meantime, remember, offer good only at participating stores. Terms and conditions may apply. Void where prohibited. Offer not valid in Alaska and Hawaii.